Okay, thanks. Hi, everybody. Hi, Gail. Hi, Margot. Let me go to the YouTube. Okay, there we go. Okay. Okay, thanks. Hi, everybody. Hi, I think somebody Gail. Has YouTube on. Thanks. Let me go to the YouTube. Still there. Well, maybe it's me. Okay, there we go. It's me. Crazy. Sorry. Hi, Chris Ree. How's everybody doing? Didn't take something to take my vitamins, and I really should do that. So there's good news today on the YouTube stalking harassment, because that case we talked about. Hi, Deborah Barron. Hi, Janae. Hi, GB. Hi, Earthbound Spirit. Hi, Nona May. Hi, Tony Monty. Tony Monty. Hello, Nicole. Oh, I'm glad you can make it, Tony. So there's good news. This Alex Belfield character, and we're going to go into depth about what he did. That he got sentenced to 5.5 years in prison. Sherri Papini got sentenced to prison, and then we're going to go over some true crime headlines, like a body found in a suitcase in Arizona, and some other stuff. But we'll wait in just a little bit. Hi, Sean Sneed. Hello, Tammy. Linda. Okay. So let me do Shirley, you're not serious. Let me do Sherri Papini first, and then we're gonna, I think it's probably best to save Alex Belfield for last, because we're probably gonna go into a lot about that. So let's go get Sherri. Sorry. Where? Okay. Sherri looks distressed here. If you don't remember who Sherri Papini is, she was the California mother that faked her disappearance. Remember, she was missing, and then she was found like shackled to a guardrail along a highway, and it was like, oh my gosh, and she said that Hispanic women took her, but it was all a hoax, okay? So she claimed she was kidnapped and tortured for 3 weeks back in 2016. But she was actually staying with an ex-boyfriend 600 miles from her house. She's been sentenced to 18 months in prison for this hoax. Prosecutors asked for an 8-month sentence followed by 3 years of probation, but the senior U.S. District Judge William B. Shub decided on a longer sentence for the so-called supermom, Sherri Papini. She pled guilty in April to 2 counts of mail fraud and making false statements that led to thousands of man-hours of searching for her alleged kidnappers, and she received $30,000 in victims' compensation. The plea agreement called for 8 months in prison followed by 3 years of supervised release, but Papini's attorney previously said the shame and embarrassment of what she did is enough. It's punishment enough. And they asked for 1 month in prison and 7 months under house arrest. Prosecutors disagreed. A lesser sentence, such as the 1 month of imprisonment recommended by probation or home detention in lieu of incarceration, is not sufficient to achieve the purposes of sentencing, the prosecutor said. Papini has also been ordered to pay more than $300,000 restitution to the California Victim Compensation Board, the Social Security Administration, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office, and the FBI. Before her plea, she was facing 34 counts of mail fraud with a possible sentence of up to 20 years in prison and another 5 years for lying to the FBI. Papini was reported missing back in November 2nd of 2016. She was found 22 days later, emaciated with cuts and bruises all over her body. She told investigators that 2 Hispanic women kidnapped her at gunpoint, and she even provided descriptions for a sketch artist. Investigators later learned via DNA that she was with an ex-boyfriend in Costa Mesa, far away from her Shasta County home. The former boyfriend gave investigators information about her stay with him and said the 2 communicated with one another over prepaid cell phones for nearly a year before Papini executed her fake kidnapping plan. After Papini's guilty plea in April, her husband, Keith Papini, he filed for divorce. So you get a divorce and you go to prison, right? So she gets a divorce, she goes to prison, sentenced to 18 months. I don't think she's happy. Oh my gosh, thank you for gifting a membership. Thank you so much. And Carolyn P. is the recipient. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you, Earthbound, and welcome to membership, Carolyn P. Okay, on to the next. Okay, let's go back. Okay, we're going to look at this body that was found in a suitcase in Arizona. And then we're going to look at anything about Eliza Fletcher. There we go. So, okay, come on now. In Arizona, authorities have identified a body that was reportedly found in a suitcase in the desert on Saturday. The body was found in the suitcase by a cyclist. She was on a public trail in Phoenix when she discovered what appeared to be a bloody head sticking out of a large piece of luggage. Police have identified the deceased woman as Jennifer Beadle, 39 years old. Jennifer's body was reportedly located 100 yards from the main road, and the cyclist who stumbled upon the grisly scene said she immediately called 911. The cyclist also recounted the ordeal on Nextdoor, a hyper-local social media platform for neighborhoods. I looked at it, I rode by it, and I noticed a head. It was wet, and I kind of noticed a knee or something, a leg coming out. Phoenix police have not disclosed the details regarding Beadle's death or her possible disappearance. Wow. That is pretty gruesome, right? Let's see if there's any other information about that. Oh, boy. So it was on a trail near Ashler Hills Drive and 40th Street. A neighbor said he learned about the gruesome discovery from a post on the Nextdoor app, adding that nothing like this has happened in the 11 years that he's lived there. And anyone with information regarding Beadle's murder is asked to contact the Phoenix Police Department or Silent Witness at 480-WITNESS or 480-TEST go. Testigo. What is that? Testigo? Right? Yeah. Test I go. For Spanish speaking individuals. Wow. Okay. So that's too much. Okay, and then there was another. And then there were, oh, let's see here. No. Okay. All right, let's go back to our headlines here. Okay. I don't want to go into that one yet. I want to do a few more headlines before we talk about Alex Belfield, okay? So, yesterday, was it yesterday we spoke about, I'm just going to just go over it again real about the LSU student, 21 years old, who was found shot dead in her car at the train crossing. 21-year-old Allison Rice was a senior majoring in marketing at the Baton Rouge School. She worked at a restaurant called The Shed. She worked there with several family members. She was found dead at around 2 a.m. on the eastern side of the tracks at Government Street. They heard the train. They heard the shots. From a nearby surveillance system, the shooting was not seen on video, but the shots were recorded. And there were about a dozen shots as the train passed by. And when the gunfire stops, a car's screeching tires are heard. The Baton Rouge police have not said whether they have suspects or an idea of the motive in the shooting. Detectives are out talking to neighbors in the community, reaching out to business owners to see if they can review some surveillance footage that they may possibly have, said the police spokesperson LaJean McNeely. Another witness said the area has problems. Floyd Norman said a fatal shooting is not surprising. We've got a lot of problems around here. When night falls, I try not to leave my house. I'm not trying to be out here at night. The restaurant, The Shed, posted about the college student's death on Facebook on Fridays and was open for business on Saturday so customers could watch the LSU Mississippi State football game on 18 screens. It's just devastating, co-owner Chez Ciccone said. My staff, they're just crying. She was part of our family. She was a wonderful girl with her whole life ahead of her, and her only crime was being stuck at a train track. Her death has been ruled a homicide. As of Monday night, police have not identified a suspect. Okay, the package killer. Have you heard of the package killer? Missouri prosecutors announced on Monday that they have charged a suspect in the unsolved slayings of 4 women in 1990 and 1991. Gary Molberg, 73 years old, has been charged with the first-degree murders of Robin Meehan, who was 18, Brenda Pruitt, who was 27, Donna Reitmeyer, 40, and Sandy Little, who was 21, in St. Louis. Gary Molberg is currently serving a life sentence for killing Kenneth Atchison in 1993 and robbing him of $6,000 and storing him in a plywood box in his basement. Meehan, Pruitt, Little, and Reitmeyer were also all gagged, strangled, and had their faces covered. The case was reopened in 2008, but it was in March when Molberg's DNA in CODIS, or the Combined DNA Index System database, was linked to the 4 murders. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch reported that DNA from a condom wrapper on Meehan's body was used to connect Mulberg to her murder. Mulberg allegedly admitted to killing Meehan, Little, and Pruitt after having prosecutors agree to not pursuing the death penalty. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch reported that Mulberg previously spent time in prison for robbing and raping a woman in Kansas in the 1970s, and he has been in jail for Atchison's murder since 1995. Mulberg has kidney failure. It's unlikely he's going to live long enough to be executed. So, another cold case solved, right? Okay, and then about the Parkland school murders, the school shooting, the mass shooting, and all of the victims that were killed that day and everyone that was injured is going to be the subject of a new movie? Let's see. Reality show? Nicholas Cruz pled guilty to killing 17 people, including students and teachers at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. The penalty phase of the trial is underway, with jurors being asked to decide whether Nicholas Cruz should spend the rest of his life in prison or be sentenced to death. And so far there have been 11 days of defense testimony, including the shooter's biological sister, who did not grow up in the same household as Nicholas. During her testimony, she was asked about her mother's heavy use of alcohol while she was pregnant with Nicholas, and her knowledge of a reality show based on another brother, Zachary Cruz. A heated exchange between the judge and the defense resulted in a motion being filed by the defense for Judge Elizabeth Sherri to remove herself from the case. When the defense suddenly rested its case without notice, Sherri called the defense decision the most uncalled for professional way to try a case. The defense had indicated an intention to call 40 witnesses, but they rested their case after only calling 25. Now, this sudden announcement meant prosecutors weren't ready to start their rebuttal case. So now this is going to go well into October, because the rebuttal, I believe it doesn't even start until October 10th, I believe, is when they're going to start that. So this is like a very long time to just even get this case to a jury. It's just a little bit crazy what's going on there, right? I would say so. Okay. Now, Eliza Fletcher, if you remember, she is the teacher that was out for that jog, and she was forced into a vehicle and then killed. So the alleged Tennessee killer accused of murdering Memphis mother Eliza Fletcher was in court on Monday morning in connection to a rape he allegedly committed last year. The suspect, Cleo Henderson, 38 years old, appeared before two Shelby County judges during the past several days. Monday's hearing was for Fletcher's case, Eliza Fletcher's case. Another hearing last week for an alleged 2021 rape and attack on a victim, Alicia Franklin, with a weapons charge in connection with the same case. For the Eliza Fletcher case, Henderson's public defender requested additional time, and the hearing was rescheduled for September 28th. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation said in a statement that it didn't complete testing on a sample from that 2021 rape until August 29th of this year, and Cleo Henderson was identified as the suspect on September 5th, the same day that investigators found Eliza's body behind an abandoned house in South Memphis. Cleo Henderson was identified as the suspect in Eliza Fletcher's disappearance abduction on September 2nd, within 18 hours, because the Memphis Police Department requested a rush on a sample. TBI said something it didn't request for the September 21st, 2021 rape. Had they done so, Cleo Henderson would have already been in jail. "He put a gun to my neck," Franklin said on Sunday while speaking to the media. "I really thought he was going to shoot me in the back of my head." Franklin added that she felt the Memphis Police Department failed her and other victims since they didn't catch Fletcher until he attacked and ultimately killed another person. "I was just an average black girl in the city of Memphis, she said. I just think it wasn't a priority. I called back again like 4 months later, and they were like, well, just keep in mind that it can take anywhere from a year or 2 to process a raped kid. So at that point, I gave up." News media obtained a copy of Henderson's indictment, which read on September 21st, 2021 in Shelby County, Tennessee, and before the finding of the indictment did unlawfully and intentionally, knowingly or recklessly, penetrate the victim by the use of force or coercion while armed with a weapon. For Eliza Fletcher's death, Henderson has been charged with murder, premeditated murder, murder in perpetration of a kidnapping, as well as aggravated kidnapping and tampering with and fabricating evidence. "I've been up all night thinking about this beautiful soul. I can't sleep, I can't eat. My heart pours out for her and her family, especially those babies, because I know what she experienced firsthand. May your soul rest in everlasting peace, Eliza," Franklin posted on her Facebook after hearing about the murder. Cleo Henderson is remaining behind bars without bail. Okay, so now let's talk about Alex Belfield. He's very smug, right? That's what they said he was throughout the trial, smug. He's a former BBC local radio host, DJ, and a precedent has been set because he has been sentenced to prison for 5.5 years for stalking broadcasters, including Jeremy Vine, and subjecting his victims to an avalanche of hatred. Alex Belfield is 42 years old. Last month, he was found guilty of waging a relentless stalking campaign against broadcasters, with Jeremy Vine labeling him the Jimmy Savile of trolling. So sentencing Belfield at Nottingham Crown Court on Friday, the judge, Justice Saini, said, "Your offenses are so serious, only a custodial sentence can be justified." The judge said that while Belfield's actions were not traditional stalking, your methods were just as effective a way of intimidating victims and in many ways much harder to deal with. He added that there was no escape for Alex Belfield's victims until bail conditions were imposed before his trial, and he agreed with Vine's characterization that the ex-DJ had weaponized the internet against those he targeted. He also ordered indefinite restraining orders be made against Belfield in favor of his victims and 4 other individuals. The trial heard Belfield had repeatedly posted or sent abusive messages, videos, and emails to his targets, and in recent years had set up a YouTube channel known as Celebrity Radio. The BBC Radio Northampton presenter Bernie Keith was feeling suicidal by a tsunami of hate, and that was heard at the trial, while Jeremy Vine, a Channel 5 and BBC Radio 2 presenter, described his abuse as an avalanche of hatred. Jurors accepted that Belfield had caused serious alarm or distress to 2 victims, that he was found guilty of simple stalking in relation to Vine and the theater blogger Philip Dehaney. The judge said a pre-sentence report showed that while Belfield fully acknowledges the distress to victims, it also highlights that you still appear to focus on the impact on you and feel in certain respects that you have been unfairly treated. Giving evidence in court, Vine said watching Belfield's videos was like swimming in sewage. It felt like I had a fish hook in my face and my flesh was being torn, and the only way to avoid further pain was to stay completely still. I was brought so low, I just thought, there's no point broadcasting if the effect is that I've got this. Jurors convicted Belfield of 4 charges committed between 2012 and 2021. Let me go, there's another important article I want to get to about Belfield, where it gives us a lot more information about exactly Jeremy Vine has criticized social media companies for failing to take action against online hate in the wake of sending Alex Belfield to prison. Companies such as YouTube and Twitter had no moral values, said the BBC Radio 2 and Channel 5 broadcaster. Belfield, a former BBC Radio Leeds presenter, was jailed for 5.5 years on Friday after being found guilty by a jury of stalking broadcasters, including Vine, subjecting his victims to an avalanche of hate. The judge said that Belfield's actions were not traditional stalking, but were just as an effective way of intimidating victims and in many ways much harder to deal with. He referred to witnesses who said that Alex Belfield had weaponized the internet, describing that as a wholly apt description of your conduct. Vine described Belfield as the Jimmy Savile of trolling and said watching Belfield's YouTube videos was like swimming in sewage. Vine was critical of social media platforms and spoke to the Sunday Times. He said, "We had to get lawyers to get this shite taken down, and even then it's hard. The companies just say no. They don't have any moral values." Vine said it was a scandal that Belfield could report his own case on YouTube and said the law was still catching up with new technology. Belfield had 360,000 followers on his YouTube Voice of Reason channel and 43,000 on Twitter. The judge said Belfield directed his attacks via social media in highly negative and often abusive terms. His aim was, in his own words, to haunt his victims, and he deployed his army of followers to pile on with abusive messages to those targeted, said the judge. Online stalkers like you have an ability to recruit an army of followers whose conduct massively expands the effect of your stalking, said the judge. You made communications which had serious impact on the private lives of the complainants, with distressing effects on their mental and physical health. You are entitled to hold and express views, but you are not entitled to destroy the personal lives of your victims through online harassment. Belfield was found guilty in August of stalking Vine and 3 others after a 5-week trial at the Nottingham Crown Court. Last Saturday, Belfield, by then a convicted stalker, performed alongside Kate Hopkins at the Joe Longthorne Theatre in Blackpool. The show was called Two Gobshites Live. Alex and Katie is the perfect night out if you want to laugh at the insanity of our lefty world, the blurb went. They're not PC, but totally LOL. Watch them mercilessly ridicule everyone from politicians to CBC Radio Northampton presenter Bernie Keith, who was left feeling suicidal by a tsunami of hate. His other victims were the theater blogger Philip Dehaney and the videographer Ben Hewis. Vine said, "The stalking was common for broadcasters. Of my 3 best female friends on the BBC, all of them have had stalkers. I think stalking is the industrial disease of broadcasting." YouTube said it suspended monetization on Belfield's channel, as in it's not allowed to carry advertising in February. That was for violating its harassment policy. A spokesperson said monetization of the Voice of Reason channel remain suspended for violating our creator responsibility policy. If we see that a creator's off-platform behavior harms our users, community employees, or ecosystem, we take action to protect the community. A spokesperson for Twitter said they had no comment. Wait, there's more. Hang on here. Stalking is among the most insidious and terrifying of crimes for its victims, eroding their sense of security and pitching them into a state of fear in which they never feel safe. Alex Belfield was sentenced to 5.5 years for a series of stalking offenses is a measure of how seriously the courts view such criminality. One of his victims, radio and television presenter Jeremy Vine, articulated the effect online stalking has, speaking of how he feared for his family's safety. Belfield has, he said, weaponized the internet by motivating hundreds of thousands of followers to join his campaign of abuse. His harrowing testimony and criticism of the social media Belfield used to abuse him include YouTube and Twitter, and it raises wider issues. Both those platforms failed to take down frightening posts, which led Mr. Vine to accuse them of lacking moral values. Many will agree. Social media giants have long evaded responsibility for offensive content by hiding behind the conceit that they are not publishers, merely platforms for material created by others. This effectively allows them to sidestep regulations that apply to mainstream media, whether in print, broadcast, or online. Belfield's cruelty and conviction have highlighted the need for this anomaly to be addressed, if necessary, by new legislation. It is unacceptable that anyone should be subjected to vile abuse that puts them in fear of their lives, whilst the media is being used to inflict terror, claim it has nothing to do with them. So, I mean, and there's also something else while I was researching this that I saw. This is hopefully something that will move what's going on here. An English broadcaster, Ian Lee, broke down while live streaming his reaction to his stalker, Alex Belfield's jail sentencing. For 10 years, Belfield, a YouTuber and an ex-BBC radio presenter, stalked and harassed various people online using social media platforms, but on Friday, justice was served as Belfield, 42, was jailed for 5.5 years. Alex Belfield made my life miserable for 10 years. I considered suicide. He told me to do it, Lee tweeted. Today, he was sentenced to 5.5 years. This is not a celebration. What this is for me is a validation that everything this effort put me through was real and it happened, Lee said, sitting alongside his radio partner, Catherine Boyle. And it happened for 10 years, and he did his best to try to make my life miserable. Hold on a minute, I'm going to follow this guy. So this is Lane Lee. Let's see, let me if I can go right to his tweet. Hang on. He has a show, Rude Awakening, and let's go to your tweets, buddy. Let's see what. Okay, so So on September 18th, he has a quick message to the supporters of Alex Belfield who have been targeting me. And he said he's getting flack from supporters of Alex Belfield. He said, for the last few weeks, I've been getting the most obnoxious responses to my YouTube videos from someone calling themselves Sarah Everard's Arists. Now, Sarah Everard's was the woman that you remember, she was murdered in London. You'd be hard pushed to make up a more offensive name. Alex Belfield goes to prison. Those posts stop. Obviously, him. Let's see what else. Then I want to get to the one. He said that I remember there was a story about me on radio. This is on the 17th of September, Radio Today, and one of the comments was derogatory and by someone called Sue. I sighed. It was clearly Belfield. Radio Today, as far as I'm aware, didn't remove the comment when I asked them to. So he is putting again a link to the story on Radio Today that Alex Belfield is sentenced to jail for 5.5 years. Let's see what else. Here's another person, Liam Tully, who said, Alex Belfield used to message me, sending abuse and offering me money, saying I clearly didn't have any, as I'm a failed comedian in my mother's back bedroom, which isn't true. It was actually my dad's back bedroom. Anyway, enjoy prison. Let me know if you need any money. And then Wellbeing in the Arts said, we send love and support to anyone and everyone who was subjected to abuse, hatred, and harassment at the hands of Alex Belfield. There is zero place in our industry or wider society for such behavior, and he has rightly been sentenced. So there's another, this Lane Lee is posting something from an Aaron Sidewell who says, below is an email I got during my time on a show. Everything had been going really, and I was enjoying, it says really, I guess he forgot well, and I was enjoying my time there. I did an interview on our first UK venue, which was quite odd. The interviewer made inappropriate comments throughout about my looks and life choices. And Lane Lee said, this is insane. How many people did his evil touch? Talking about Alex Belfield. And then he has another tweet. Yes, let's increase the sentences for those crimes. It's not difficult to grasp, mate. Okay, offend those in power, you will get 5.5 years. Physically assault a normal person, break into a house, mug someone, and it's likely you'll get less time in prison. Let's see. And then Lane Lee said on September 17th, Alex Belfield is a stalker. He drove people to contemplate suicide. He threatened families and he used children. Last night was his first night in prison. Hopefully he has another 1,898. The usual idiots are being deeply dippy and supporting him. And there is a video, which I'm going to go into this man's videos and look at them, because he has a video that convicted stalker Alex Belfield tried to ruin my life. And then Jeremy Vine is also in there. He said, I see the gibbering little army of Alex Belfield trolls are flailing around today, attacking the judge, the jury, and the victims. Belfield used the sticks and stones defense, and it failed. Watch this by Lanley and see if you think words don't cause harm. So there is a YouTube video about that, and I think we should watch that and see. Now here's something here. Let me see what this is. Thank you to everyone who has sent. Let me just pull this over here. Thank you to everyone who has sent messages of kindness and support. I was one of 8 courageous people who stood up to Alex Belfield on behalf of many, many other victims. Although the verdict was divided and 4 of us were overlooked, we stood together. Today's sentencing is a victory for all of us, especially the 4 incredible women who endured a decade of persecution and bullying. I want to thank DC Janet Percival for listening to us. I also want to thank John McGinnis KC for his sterling work and care, and Mr. Justice Saini for recognizing us all and giving us the outcome we needed. The judge also mentioned my mom, who stood up for me when Belfield dragged her into this mess. He said everyone should have a mom like yours. This was always going to be a difficult conviction to uphold. It relied on the redefinition of stalking to recognize social media as a new and dangerous tool. I am grateful to the jury for recognizing this and for finding Alex Belfield accountable for his behavior. I now look to platforms including YouTube and Twitter to acknowledge their responsibility to protect the countless victims, including myself, and individuals like Alex Belfield, who use and profit from these tools, misusing the right of free speech to persecute and harass others. Hold on a second. And then he has another one here. It says, Alex Belfield made my life miserable for 10 years. I considered suicide. He told me to do it. Today he was sentenced to 5.5 years. Here's a video of me reacting to the news as it comes in. I will post an edited version later. Ben Hewis, who was also mentioned, said, since first encountering Alex Belfield in 2019, not a day has gone by without me losing countless waking and sleeping hours, terrified about what he might do next to target me and my family. During the trial, the judge said that while Belfield did not physically approach his victims in a conventional stalking situation, his methods were just as effective a way as intimidating and were in many ways much harder to deal with. Several of Belfield's victims say they considered suicide during the harassment, including Lee. In addition to his sentencing, all the complainants will now have restraining orders against Belfield. So, I mean, there's a lot of Twitter to comb over. And Felicia Lewis, good to see you. Thank you for becoming a Deputy Rambler. Very much appreciate that. Well, yes, and let's hope this is just the first of many, because these people try to use free speech that they can bully, harass, stalk, and stalking is going into someone's life when you are going in there and bringing out their children and showing where their children work, giving their children's names out, saying where they work, inciting hate, lying about someone, okay, demonizing them, all of this stuff that's being done, that continues to be done, all of the body shaming, age shaming, look shaming, everything that's being done on multiple channels that are there for nothing but to circulate this hate, to make people believe this, so they in turn attack someone. Grown women in their 70s, women in their 60s, in their 50s, perpetuating this hate. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And when you give the truth back, they don't want it. They keep turning it around, saying, oh no, that's not true. This is true. This is true because this is what I got from an obituary. This is true because this is what I got from that. And they monetizing their hate, and they have no content without it, and they sit there for hours and hours and hours and stalk. And that's exactly what it is. It's stalking. And it's illegal, and it's disgusting, and they take pictures when you go on vacation. They're stalking you when you go on vacation. They're calling places you're on vacation and pretending they're there, so that you have to contact the corporate entities. And that every time you go on a vacation now, you have to have letters drafted up that you can hand the staff of any resort you go to let them know that you're the victim of this. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And this is a victory, and let's hope it continues. And this is a great, great victory for all of us that have been going through this crap with these people on these platforms. So this is a very good day, very good day. And you should all go there and follow these people on Twitter, and then watch their channels and their videos where they say that this guy has destroyed their life. And, let your voice be heard about what's going on here, because it doesn't end there. We've got to get out what's happening here and happening to anyone here. Here being YouTube. On this platform. Hello, Sassy Darcy. But it's a great encouragement for all of us that are pursuing things legally and that have cases. A great thing. It's set a precedent. Hi, Alicia Biso. Hi, Captain Lee Fan. Hi, Margot. Hi, Felicia. Hi, Debbie L. Hi, Linda. Hi, Eliza. Chris Reese said, if you're a grown woman and still a mean girl, please seek help. It's weird. It's 2022. We don't diss, bully, or hate on other women. We uplift, encourage, and applaud each other. Yeah. Some people just never change their behavior. It's who they are. It's through and through who they are. Hi, Wo Lisa. How are you? Hi, Kevin Leonard. Love you too, Larky. Thank you. So, yeah, all of these people that went through this, while this guy's saying, sticks and stones, words would never hurt me. they're showing that their words did hurt them, that they were suicidal over the words. And you're talking about, professional broadcasters and weaponizing social media forums like YouTube. And now as this story gets picked up by more and more publications, and it is going into the publications, and these people are getting this out there, we can help get it out there and tell your story, tell our story, tell you whatever, let them know that it doesn't just end there. There's YouTube needs to reel in nothing but hate channels. Oh, thank you, Elisa. Oh, thanks. Love you too, Nicole. Let me see something. Hi, Danielle. Say you can't tag. Okay. I want to see this. I'm gonna put this guy's Twitter in there. Hold on. I just want to go back. Let's see what else. So we've got here. I agree. Okay, so what it says is hold on. Let's see what we got here. His actions, meaning Belfield, were said to have caused his victims serious alarm and distress, which impacted their daily lives due to the ferocious and relentless abuse. He remained emotionless as the verdicts were returned after more than 14 hours of deliberation. Belfield was found guilty of stalking to cause alarm and distress to BBC Radio Northampton's Bernie Keith and videographer Ben Hurst. Belfield was warned to expect a custodial sentence when he appears in Nottingham Crown Court on September 16th. That's when he was sentenced. Granting him bail, Justice Pushbinder Saini said, "I would remind you, Mr. Belfield, you'll need to be extra cautious about anything you say in terms of online communications." During the trial, the court heard that Belfield had made a string of distressing and gratuitous allegations about former colleagues. Prosecutor John McGuinness said the alleged victims did not want to be contacted by Alex Belfield. They did not want to see or hear or know what it was he was saying about them, but he went ahead and did it anyway, relentlessly harassing them, knowing or being aware he was harassing them to the extent that what he did caused them serious alarm or distress, which affected their daily lives for the worse. It is not suggested that the defendant's conduct involved physical stalking, although such was the effect of what Alex Belfield did that some were, in fact, worried about the possibility of Mr. Belfield turning up at their homes. The stalking which this case is concerned with is a different type and is more akin to internet trolling. Belfield, who represented himself, declined to give evidence during his trial. The judge said Belfield made wholly false allegations about Mr. Vine stealing £1,000, had published his home address, and left Mr. Vine so scared he had asked his family to watch out for Belfield, describing watching Belfield's video output as like swimming in sewage. Mr. Vine said of Belfield's conduct, "It felt like I had a fish hook in my face and my flesh was being torn, and the only way to avoid further pain was to stay completely still." And then again, what he says is really important, that a pre-sentence report showed that Belfield fully acknowledges that the distress to victims that he caused, but it also highlights you still appear to focus on the impact on you, and you feel in certain respects you've been treated unfairly. So he thinks, again, like we see over here, they think they're the victims, right? They're the victims, but they're the ones on the attack day after day after day after day after day after day after day. The judge added there is no escape for Belfield's victims until bail conditions were imposed ahead of his trial, and agreed with Mr. Vine's characterization that the ex-DJ had weaponized the internet against those he targeted. And now all of his people that are stalking, they should all be charged, because now they're going out and stalking the same people. And until that happens, and until it happens consistently, there's a lot of videos on now about this. So let's see who else has one. Subscribe there. Let me just see something on Twitter, because and I bet what is going on here? That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this. Okay, so Philip, I'm gonna start following these people. You know, they have right in their description, Philip Dehaney, blogger, follow me. Victim of Alex Belfield, full story. Let's see the full story. Oh, good. We have the sentencing here. Let's take a look at this. Sentencing remarks and judgment on the Crown's application under Section 5A of the Protection from Harassment Act, 1997. Mr. Belfield, on the 5th of August 2022, following a 5-week trial here in the Nottingham Crown Court, the jury convicted you on 4 counts. On count 5, you were convicted of stalking Mr. Bernard Spedding, known professionally as Bernie Keith. I will refer to him by that name. The stalking of Mr. Keith caused him serious alarm or distress. On count 5, you were convicted of stalking Ben Hewis, also causing him serious alarm or distress. On count 7, you were convicted of stalking Philip Dehaney. On count 8, you were convicted of stalking Jeremy Vine. Counts 5 and 6 are the more serious form of aggravated stalking because they caused your victim serious alarm or distress. Counts 7 and 8 reflect the less serious form of stalking under the law. It now falls to me to sentence you for these offenses and to deal with the Crown's related application for restraining orders against you in relation to Mr. Keith, Mr. Hewis, Mr. Dehaney, and Mr. Vine. Those orders seek to prevent further harassment of these people. I will refer to those individuals collectively in my remarks as the complainants. At the end of my sentencing, I will also need to deal with a separate matter, which is the Crown's application for restraining orders against you in relation to the 4 complainants where the jury acquitted you. Those were counts 1 through 4 of Rosina Breen, Helen Thomas, Liz Green, and Stephanie Hurst. I will deliver a judgment on that application when I conclude my sentencing, and it will be available as an addendum to the sentencing remarks I am now delivering. The applications for restraining orders are not opposed by you, but I need to give my reasons for making them. My attention has been helpfully drawn by counsel to the intimidatory offenses guideline. I have also considered the general guidelines on custodial sentences and the totality guideline, as well as the material provisions of the Sentencing Act 2020. Given that there were separate crimes against separate victims, which I consider need to be each marked with distinctive sentences, I propose to pass sentences which will be served consecutively. I am aware that certain of the facts overlap, but consider, nevertheless, that this case for consecutive sentences, given the particular forms your harassment of the different victims took. Your offenses are so serious that only a custodial sentence can be justified. But because I am sentencing you for more than one offense, I must ensure that, standing back, the total overall sentence reflects all your offending behavior in a just and proportionate manner. That is the principle of totality to which I will make reference in my remarks, and which you have heard counsel discussing with me. I will apply that principle by adjusting each individual consecutive sentence. I have received very helpful written and oral submissions from Mr. McGinnis, KC, and Mr. Rowcliffe for the Crown, and from Mr. Aubrey Casey for you. Mr. Aubrey Casey presented your mitigation in a measured and realistic manner, recognizing that the custody threshold has been crossed. I am grateful to him and to Mr. McGinnis, KC, and Mr. Rowcliffe for the substantial assistance they provided me throughout the trial. I have had regard to the moving victim personal statements which have been submitted to the court. I emphasize, however, that the issue of the appropriate sentences is for me and not for your victims to decide, applying the relevant guidelines and the law. A very helpful and detailed pre-sentence report is before me. The report shows that you have finally acknowledged the distress caused to your victims, but highlights that you still appear to focus on the impacts of events on you and feel in certain respects that you have been unjustly treated. I have read the several character references provided for you. I accept that they speak in positive terms about you and commend your work in the community. Mr. Aubrey KC has reminded me of your successful career and online following and underlined your particular style and broadcasting persona. It is also clear that you come from a close family, that you have acted with real kindness in assisting those facing substantial challenges in their lives, particularly during the pandemic. It was also submitted that custody would have a profound effect on you and those dependent upon you, including 9 employees. Where I state findings of fact in my sentencing remarks, I am satisfied of those facts on the evidence called before the jury to a standard which makes me sure of them. A different civil standard applies when I deal with the Crown's applications for restraining orders. I will begin with some of the common features of the conduct of the basis of which you were convicted by the jury, and I will turn to the specific victims. The stalking you committed was not the conventional type which is popularized in the press. You did not meet or physically approach or watch any of your victims as a traditional stalker might have done. Your victims were, however, just as effective as a way of intimidating your victims, and were in many ways much harder to deal with. Your stalking consisted of use of repeated email communications, social media content on Twitter, and creation and publication of YouTube videos on your channel, The Voice of Reason, in which you commented in highly negative and often abusive terms about the complainants. As you described in some of your videos, your aim was to haunt your victims. They gave graphic evidence that they believed you would be true to your word and would never go away. It was only the imposition of bail conditions restraining your actions which have given them peace in the period to trial. A number of witnesses said you had weaponized the internet. I find that to be wholly apt description of your conduct. The emails were very widely distributed and not simply sent to the direct victims. When the victims sought to block your emails, the common device you used was to use a different email address to get through to them. That tactic was used by you on many occasions. In some instances, you used the technique of identifying the personal home addresses of individuals in your communications, which understandably caused them to fear for their safety. Their feelings of, in effect, being followed or monitored were justified. The YouTube videos and tweets reached your very substantial audience. The effect of these communications was to encourage the readers and viewers to form highly negative views of the complainants, often based on wholly false allegations by you. Those readers and viewers then joined the abuse of the complainants in a way which is sadly now a familiar feature of social media interaction. Online stalkers like you have the ability to recruit an army of followers whose conduct massively expands the effect of your stalking. That is why I say your stalking is in many respects more serious than a conventional stalker. I accept that in certain limited respects, you were acting as a form of media commentator in stating views on matters of public interest when you made some of your communications. However, even accepting the latitude our laws give to those exercising free speech rights, on the jury's verdicts, you exceed the generous margins. You made communications which had serious impacts on the private lives of the complainants, with distressing effects on their mental and physical health. I find that the motivating factor in your communications about these complainants was not the exercise of journalistic freedom to comment on matters of public interest, but personal grudges and responses to real or apparent slights. I am not imposing sentences on you because you made comments about the BBC or about matters of public interest. Your sentences reflect your repeated and personal harassment of the victims and not your view on any issue of public interest. You are entitled to hold and express views, but you are not entitled to destroy the personal lives of your victims through online harassment. I now turn to the specific counts. I have taken into account all of the oral and written evidence at trial, but in the interests of brevity, will only surmise the nature of your conduct towards each victim at a high level in order to explain my sentences and application of the guidelines. Count 4. Bernie Keith. Turning first to count 4 concerning Bernie Keith, he is a highly respected and established presenter of many years standing at BBC Radio Northampton. Your harassment of him took place over a substantial period of time. These were the 9 years between 2011 and 2020. It was only at the very end of this period that the harassment overlapped to some extent with that of other complainants. Having once been a friend and acquaintance, your campaign of harassment against Mr. Keith first took the form of many emails which sought to criticize any aspect of his shows and then moved into highly offensive material. He did his best to ignore your communications, and he asked you, in polite and restrained terms, to stop. You did not. There were many communications, and not all were produced in court. They appear to have become less frequent around 2018, but your communications escalated substantially from the 1st of October 2019, when you suspected that Mr. Keith had communicated by email with a person he did not know, Mr. Hewis, to warn him of your past behavior and to inform him of what he believed you had done to other BBC employees. Mr. Hewis then published part of that email from Mr. Keith in a tweet. You then bombarded Mr. Keith with Facebook messages, emails, and made highly abusive YouTube videos about him, including false allegations that he had mental health issues. Even when he instructed lawyers for you to communicate with, and they requested you not contact Mr. Keith, you continued to send repeated abusive communications directly to Mr. Keith. He had no escape from you. There was no purpose in communicating directly other than continuing your campaign of harassment. Mr. Keith gave the jury graphic and distressing evidence of how close he came to hanging himself. He was seconds away from taking his life as a result of your conduct. You made this highly successful and confident radio presenter lose all joy in life, and you turned him into a shell. Mr. Keith also felt at serious physical risk of attack, although at no point did you commit any physical acts against him. Mr. Keith gave evidence, which I accept, of heightened awareness of individuals, additional security measures, and said he gave his fellow villagers copies of your photograph. He was terrified of you. I find that Count 5 falls within Category A1 of the relevant stalking guideline, and that is the most serious category. As to culpability, the history I have summarized demonstrates that your actions were conducted over a substantial period, and I find were intended to maximize Mr. Keith's distress. Your actions were of an extreme nature and pushed this matter clearly into the top of the culpability range. As to harm, as I have identified, very significant distress was caused to Mr. Keith. I need to identify that starting point for your sentence. Your stalking of Mr. Keith as charged on the indictment began before the 3rd of April 2017. The date when the maximum penalty was increased from 5 to 10 years. The guideline reflects the higher penalty. It is common ground that the maximum penalty for this count is 5 years imprisonment. If your offending had been post 3rd of April 2017, the starting point under the guideline for this form of stalking would have been 5 years. Both the Crown and your counsel submitted, and I accept that I should move down from that starting point to take into account the lower earlier statutory maximum of 5 years imprisonment, and I will take a starting point of 2 years and 6 months. I then need to consider aggravating and mitigating factors. There are the following 2 matters which I have already taken into account in my categorization. They justify upward movement from the starting point. First, the fact that your postings publicly about Mr. Keith resulted in followers of your social media profiles abusing him over a lengthy period. In some cases, this has extended to death threats. Second, the false and scandalous accusation that Mr. Keith had regularly had sex in public on gay beaches with strangers for 2 decades, coupled with the threat to include the allegation in a story which you would sell for publication. The mitigation is lack of previous convictions and previous good character, there has also been some remorse expressed, as recorded in the pre-sentence report. I make allowance for those matters, and I also have regard for the principle of totality in making an adjustment to my sentence. Having regard to all of those matters, I impose a sentence of imprisonment of 2 years and 6 months in respect of count 5 concerning Mr. Keith. Count 6, Ben Hewis. As to count 6 concerning Mr. Hewis, he is a videographer who works in the theater and wedding industry. You did not know him and have in fact never met him. His problems began when he went online in late 2019 to support those in the theater who he believed were being unfairly attacked by you on Twitter. Your stalking of him took place between the end of 2019 and went into mid-2020, when the police became involved. Your attacks on Mr. Hewis took the form of both personal emails as well as highly distressing YouTube videos. You felt that Mr. Hewis had libeled you by a post on Twitter, which included part of the private email Mr. Keith had sent Mr. Hewis on October 1st, 2019. I have already referred to that email. I am sure Mr. Hewis will regret for the rest of his life that he included that email in his tweet. That is because it led you to direct a flood of abuse towards him despite a rapid apology and retraction from him. You claimed in multiple communications to have hired and paid lawyers to sue Mr. Hewis. Those statements were false. This was intimidatory behavior towards a man who felt his family and his home were at risk. I find you had no intention of taking legal action, but decided to use online threats as a way to obtain details of who had supplied Mr. Hewis with the information about you, which he published in his tweet. Mr. Hewis gave compelling evidence as to the distress he suffered and his wish to keep his pregnant wife out of the dispute. The statutory maximum for this offense is 10 years, and I find that this stalking was category B1 with this guideline. As to culpability, I find your actions were intended to maximize distress to Mr. Hewis and took place over a sustained period, albeit a period shorter than in the case of Mr. Keith. As to harm, it is clear that serious distress was caused to Mr. Hewis, and he had to seek professional help as a result of your offending. The Category B1 starting point is 2 years, 6 months imprisonment with a range of 1 to 4 years. As to aggravating factors justifying upward adjustment, there are 4 factors increasing seriousness, and which I have not already taken into account in my categorization. First, you involved Mr. Hewis's family by using in your videos pictures of his wife and young child. You attached an image of a photo scan to an email and attempted to contact his wife. Secondly, you contacted Mr. Hewis's clients, intending to undermine his business. Thirdly, you encouraged your followers to contact him. And your posting publicly about Mr. Hewis resulted in followers on your social media profiles abusing Mr. Hewis. Fourthly, Google searches continue to reference articles about Mr. Hewis which remain available on your websites, thereby not only perpetuating the distress but also the financial effects on Mr. Hewis. These matters justify upward movement from the starting point. As to downward adjustment, the mitigation is lack of previous convictions, good character, and remorse in the form I have stated. These matters justify some limited downward movement, and I will also need to adjust the sentence to take into account the principle of totality. Having regard to all these matters, in respect of count 5, concerning Mr. Hewis, I impose a sentence of 2 years, 6 months imprisonment to run consecutively to the sentence on count 5. Count 7, Philip Dehaney. As to count 7, concerning Mr. Dehaney, the jury acquitted you of the more serious form of stalking, but found you guilty of the lesser alternative of the basic stalking offense. I must respect the jury's acquittal on the more serious charge, and it is of relevance when I consider the levels of harm caused. Like Mr. Hewis, Mr. Dehaney was the subject of a vicious and continued campaign of abuse, principally by the way of YouTube videos. He was a theater critic and a blogger who did not wish to be tagged by you into what he regarded an offensive tweet about those in the industry. He had never met you. He asked that you cease. Your online attacks and emails began in early New Year 2020. You wrongly believed that he had repeated the contents of the Hewis tweet. You again made false representations as to intended legal action. The victim started a blog in which he provided a day-to-day account of your abusive conduct. That inflamed you further. When Mr. Dehaney became uncontrollable and refused to engage, uncontactable and refused to engage with you, you went as far as calling his mother during the lockdown at the family home. We heard a recording of that call. She is clearly a robust and impressive person. Everyone needs a mom like her. Mr. Dehaney's mother repeatedly and fairly asked you again and again, what had her son done that was wrong? You failed to provide any answer. The call was, in my judgment, part of the harassment of her son, who stood by her while she took this call. It was an outrageous and cruel act to call her and to make a recording. Not only did you record the conversation, you then made false and misleading comments about what was said, about what she had said about her son, seeking to demean him in a public forum. Getting his parents involved caused serious, continuing fractures in Mr. Dehaney's relationship with them, in particular with his father. You also sought to humiliate Mr. Dehaney about his mental health in your postings and videos. Further, you sought to, in effect, blackmail him by revealing details of a long-spent conviction. The content of your YouTube videos you made about him at a time when he was clearly vulnerable and shielding with his parents during the first lockdown was shocking. The statutory maximum for this offense is 6 months imprisonment. I have to, however, consider the guideline. I find that this offense falls within Category A1 of the relevant stalking guideline, that is the highest category. As to culpability, your actions were planned. They were repetitive and intended to cause Mr. Dehaney distress and included hostility based on his sexual orientation. I do not consider the fact that you are a member of the LGBTQ community means that you cannot have acted with hostility based on Mr. Dehaney's sexual orientation as to harm him regard to the jury's verdict, including the acquittal. I find harm and distress, including psychological harm, were caused to Mr. Dehaney. Mr. Dehaney has been unable to continue his blogging enterprise as a result of your actions. This was a significant change in lifestyle. The Category A1 starting point is 12 weeks custody with a range of high-level community order to 26 weeks custody. As to aggravating factors increasing seriousness and justifying upward movement, there is one matter that I have not taken into account. It is the fact that you posted publicly about him, and that resulted in followers on your social media profiles abusing Mr. Dehaney. That magnified the effect of your abuse. These matters push the offense up in the category range. As to a downward adjustment, the mitigation is lack of previous convictions, good character, and some remorse in the form I have stated. I also have to have regard to the principle of totality and have adjusted my sentence. I impose a sentence of imprisonment of 13 weeks for count 7 to run consecutively to the sentence of count 6. Okay, go over here now. Count 8, Jeremy Vine. I turn to count 8 concerning Mr. Vine, who is a well-known radio and TV presenter. The jury again acquitted you of the more serious form of stalking, but found you guilty of the lesser alternative of basic stalking. Until trial, you had not met Mr. Vine. Your actions against Mr. Vine consisted of highly abusive and wholly false allegations given mass Twitter and video exposure. These were allegations to the effect that Mr. Vine had somehow stolen 1,000 pounds of BBC license payers' funds to use for what you call a piss-up or party following the memorial service of a dear friend of Mr. Vine, Mr. John Myers. Mr. Myers was a prominent personality in the radio industry, and the BBC made a modest contribution to his memorial fund. Mr. Vine did not know about this at the material time, and the BBC contribution had absolutely nothing to do with him. Mr. Vine did not steal anything, nor did the BBC pay for the so-called piss-up. The allegations you made against Mr. Vine were wholly false. You boasted online about the fact that in excess of 400,000 people had viewed your video about Mr. Vine containing these false allegations. Your assertions in your videos and tweets that your allegation was supported by BBC answers to Freedom of Information requests was also wholly false. They provided no support, as was revealed at trial. You were not a whistleblower in any sense, but developed a fixation with pursuing Mr. Vine with a campaign of abuse. The effect of your conduct on Mr. Vine's family and daughters was significant. Although you at no stage committed any physical acts, Mr. Vine considered himself and his family to be at risk from you and your followers. He had to ask his family to watch out for you, to take care in and around their home address. You published his home address to a mass audience. The statutory maximum for the offense against Mr. Vine is 6 months imprisonment, but I have again to return to the guideline. I find that this stalking of Mr. Vine falls under category A1 of the stalking guideline, the highest category. As to culpability, your false allegations were given wide publicity over 2 months and were intended to maximize Mr. Vine's distress. As to harm, I recognize the need to give weight to the jury's verdicts, including the acquittal. I find harm and distress, including psychological harm, was caused to Mr. Vine. He also had to make precautionary lifestyle changes for him and his family. The category A1 starting is 12 weeks custody with a range of a high-level community order to 26 weeks custody. As to aggravating factors, which I have not already taken into account in categorization, there are 2 matters. First, you actively encouraged others to contact Mr. Vine during his broadcast to pursue the baseless allegation of theft of public money. And secondly, you also encouraged others to provide private information about Mr. Vine's family and friends. Your false allegations against Mr. Vine led to a torrent of abuse being suffered online by Mr. Vine. That went into many thousands of abusive tweets received by him and personal threats. I consider that these aggravating matters take the offense up in the category range. As to downward adjustment, the mitigation is lack of previous convictions, good character, and remorse in the form I have stated. I have also have to have regard to the principle of totality in adjusting the sentence. For count 8 concerning Mr. Vine, I impose a sentence of 13 weeks imprisonment to run consecutively to the sentence of count 7. Summary sentences. I will now summarize my sentences. For count 5 concerning Mr. Keith, 2 years, 6 months imprisonment. For count 6 concerning Mr. Hewis, 2 years, 6 months imprisonment to be served consecutively to count 5. For count 7 concerning Mr. Dehaney, 13 weeks imprisonment to be served consecutively to count 6. For count 8 concerning Mr. Vine, 13 weeks imprisonment to be served consecutively to count 7. This amounts to a total of 5 years and 26 months imprisonment. This is the shortest sentence, commensurate with the seriousness of your offense as an application of the principle of totality. You will serve up to 1/2 of this sentence in custody, and you will serve the remainder on license. You must keep to the terms of your license and commit no further offenses, or you will be liable to be recalled, and then you may then serve the rest of your sentence in custody. I now turn to the issue of restraining orders in the cases where you were convicted of stalking these 4 complainants. You do not oppose these orders, but I need to give my reasons for making them independently of your non-opposition. Based on the jury's verdict in relations to each of these complainants and my assessment that absent a restraint you will repeat the stalking and harassment, I am satisfied that restraining orders on an indefinite basis are necessary. Your past conduct and qualified expression of remorse establish that this court's intervention is necessary to protect these complainants. The terms of the draft orders before me are appropriately tailored to ensure that they only interfere with your freedom of speech rights to a limited and proportionate level. I accordingly make orders in the terms of the orders before me restraining you under Section 360 of the Sentencing Act 2020. As regards each of Bernard Spedding, Ben Hewis, Philip Dehaney, and Jeremy Vine, you are until further order prohibited from contacting or attempting to contact them by any means, whether direct or indirect. You must not publish through any form of publication or electronic communication any statement or other material relating to or purporting to relate to them. You must not monitor the use by any of them of the internet, email, or any other form of electronic communication. Any breach of those orders is a serious criminal offense with a substantial criminal penalty, which may include imprisonment for up to 5 years, and you will be given a written record of the terms of the orders, and if for any reason the orders are no longer necessary and appropriate, then either you or the complainants may apply to the court for them to be amended or removed. But until that time, which may never come, they will remain in force and must be complied with to the letter. The cost incurred by the Crown in respect of these proceedings is £27,990, and it makes an application for such costs. I am satisfied that you should be made to pay a part of these costs pursuant to Section 18(1) of the Prosecution of Offences Act 1985. I have taken into account the point made on your behalf about the acquittals and convictions on lesser counts and the other penalties I have imposed. I consider a fair and proportionate sum is £10,000. Based on the ownership of a house, albeit mortgaged, and the income I infer you have received from your YouTube channel, and in the absence of other counter evidence, I am satisfied you have the means to meet the cost of £10,000. Indeed, it has not been submitted that you do not have the means to pay this sum. The surcharge will apply. Finally, I turn to my judgment on the Crown's application for restraining orders in relation to those complainants where the jury acquitted you. Again, you do not oppose that application, but I need to be satisfied that it is appropriate for me to make the orders and to give reasons for my decisions. Judgment on the Crown application under Section 5A of the PHA 1997 in relation to the complainants in respect of the counts 1 through 4 where Mr. Belfield was acquitted, the Crown applies for restraining orders against him under Section 5A of the Protection from Harassment Act 1997. These complainants were Rosina Breen, Helen Thomas, Liz Green, and Stephanie Hurst. Each of these persons gave oral evidence at the trial. Section 5A of 1997 Act empowers a court to make restraining orders against a defendant following his acquittal if the court concludes it is necessary to do so to protect a person from harassment. Nothing in this case seeks to cast any doubt on Mr. Belfield's acquittal. I am required to consider a separate question under the statute, which is the need for any future protection, even in cases where there has been an acquittal. That will require me to consider the evidence before the jury, but nothing I say seeks to question the verdicts. I am applying the civil standard of proof in identifying the facts, unlike the jury when determining the criminal charges. The court may make orders which are either time-limited or indefinite, but subject to the court's powers under the Section 5A2B. At trial, counts 1 through 4 were grouped together because they related, in part, at least, to the time Mr. Belfield spent at BBC Radio Leeds and actions Mr. Belfield took in relation to BBC employees thereafter. There were many common features of Mr. Belfield's conduct in relation to those complainants, and I will, in the interest of brevity, summarize my findings by reference to the common facts which emerged from the evidence. I will, however, also need to make reference in brief terms to evidence concerning particular complainants. In coming to my decision, I have taken into account the oral and written evidence presented to the jury, and I will also take into account the nature of the future restraints which the Crown seek will interfere with Mr. Belfield's Article 10 ECHR rights, because they essentially seek to restrain speech and communications. Accordingly, I approach matters on the basis that the need for such future restraints must be convincingly established, and the measures must satisfy a strict proportionality test. The court must balance the complainant's right to private life under Article 8 of the ECHR against Mr. Belfield's Article 10 rights. Based on the oral and written evidence before me, I am satisfied that the orders are necessary and justified. Each of the complainants requires protection from Mr. Belfield. I will express the reasons. The starting point is my findings in relation to past events. I note that the oral evidence of each of these witnesses was essentially uncontradicted by counter-oral evidence. I also found them wholly honest, impressive, and straightforward witnesses who have achieved substantial success in their fields, and they were profoundly damaged by Mr. Belfield's actions, and they have had to seek assistance from medical professionals. Each of them suffered a campaign of harassment by email and social media communications. Each of them suffered serious mental health problems arising from Mr. Belfield's conduct. The longest periods of abuse were suffered by Ms. Breen, Ms. Thomas, and Ms. Green. I find that in relation to Ms. Breen and Ms. Thomas, abusive emails running into the thousands were sent over a 10-year period. In relation to Ms. Green, there were hundreds of emails. In relation to Ms. Hurst, there were not as many emails, but there were highly offensive and transphobic social media posts and videos. I accept the evidence of the complainants that although a relatively small number of the emails were produced in court, the policy that they had been directed to follow was to delete any emails which Mr. Belfield sent. These complainants did not respond to his emails. They did not engage with him in any way. In short, they did nothing in response to the barrage of communications, yet he continued to target and harass them over long periods of time. I have not overlooked the fact that in many communications, Mr. Belfield was, aside from abuse, also making points on matters of public interest, such as BBC use of resources and listening figures, as well as concerns about content. However, in his communications concerning these complainants, he went far beyond that. His communications were often made to mass email audiences within the BBC, many of whom had nothing to do with the complainants. On occasions, he made highly offensive and personal comments about their physical appearance, including sexualized comments about them. The emails were often blind copied to them. I accept the evidence that Mr. Belfield effectively followed these women by online harassment throughout their careers. Most distressing was the fact that many years after Mr. Belfield had ceased to have anything to do with them professionally that he would email very senior personnel in the BBC with wholly false allegations that Ms. Breen and Ms. Thomas and Miss Green had bullied him. There was no escape for these complainants from Mr. Belfield until the Nottinghamshire police became involved in late 2020, and bail conditions prohibiting contact or references to these persons were imposed. I find that these complainants were targeted by Mr. Belfield because he held personal grudges against them. As regards Ms. Breen and Ms. Thomas, his former managers, he felt that they had mistreated him during his brief period working at BBC Radio Leeds in 2010 to 2011. Mr. Belfield also has a belief that women, as part of what he repeatedly called a tick box culture, were being promoted and given prominence within the BBC when he, as a person in his own view of real talent, was not being employed. I express no view as to this, save to say that holding such a belief does not provide a charter for harassment over 10 years. As to Ms. Green, he felt that she had acted inappropriately towards him at the time when she was also a radio presenter at that station. She had continued to work at BBC Radio Leeds when Mr. Belfield's contract had not been continued. As regards Stephanie Hurst, Mr. Belfield felt a personal insult when she declined an interview with him following her gender transition. That turned into a campaign of transphobic behavior, which at every turn led him to isolate her transgender status and to ridicule her in his comments and videos. I do not accept Mr. Belfield's characterization of his comments in relation to Ms. Hurst as simple parody or comment of comedic nature. They are more accurately described as transphobic and hateful comments. I find that they were motivated in part, at least, by feelings of jealousy as to her success when his own career within the BBC had floundered. It is striking that Mr. Belfield found it nearly impossible to make any communication concerning Miss Hurst without including highly offensive emojis about her transition. In each of these cases, it was essentially a personal campaign of revenge, which motivated him as opposed to some form of journalistic exercise of holding people within the BBC to account. What's going on? I don't know. She's saying one chicken leg at a time. Applying the civil standard, I find that Mr. Belfield carried out a historic course of conduct against each complainant, which amounted to statutory harassment causing distress and alarm, and that he ought to have known his actions amounted to harassment. I also find that based on the nature and extent of that conduct, on his police interviews, and the nature of his defense in this trial, that there is a very substantial risk that absent a court restraint, he is likely to continue such behavior. In my judgment, Mr. Belfield's approach at trial did not indicate any appreciation of the extent to which he had damaged the mental health of these four women. An order which is indefinite in time is justified. I cannot, on the evidence before me, find that Mr. Belfield is likely, at any particular period in the future, to have an appreciation of the inappropriateness of his past actions. The complainant's rights to a private life outweigh any freedom of speech right which Mr. Belfield might claim to exercise. The terms of the Crown's draft orders, as discussed in court, are my judgment sufficiently tailored to go no further than protecting the complainants. Article 8, rights to private life. They are proportionate and strike an appropriate balance. They do not impose any restraint on a legitimate exercise of Article 10 ECHR rights. I will make indefinite restraining orders against Mr. Belfield in favor of Rosina Breen, Helen Thomas, Liz Green, and Stephanie Hurst under Section 5A of the Protection from Harassment Act, 1997. As regards each of these persons, Mr. Belfield is until further order prohibited from contacting or attempted to contact them by any means, whether direct or indirect. He must not publish through any form of publication or electronic communication any statement or other material relating to or purporting to relate to them. He must not monitor the use by any of them of the internet, email, or any other form of electronic communication. Any breach of those orders is a serious criminal offense with substantial criminal penalties, which may include imprisonment of up to 5 years. Mr. Belfield will be given a written record of the terms of the orders, and if for any reason the orders are no longer necessary and appropriate, then either Mr. Belfield or all the complainants may apply to the court for them to be amended or removed, but until that time, which may never come, they will remain in force and must be complied with to the letter. Finally, I record that I consider each of these women acted with substantial courage and real fortitude in coming to the court to give evidence in a public forum about matters which had very substantial negative mental health impacts upon them over several years. The court's orders today are intended to provide them with protection, with criminal penalties for breach against any repetition in the future of such conduct. So very interesting. So those 4 women, basically, because they were told to delete these emails and not respond to them, didn't have these emails to bring to court. Now, why they couldn't be, I guess you can't get them after, this was over 10 years, and if they're on an email server, like if AOL or something deletes, you delete your email, you're not going to be able to retrieve it after a certain time if it's not on a database. And that's what happened here, evidently. And they didn't have the emails. And because they had a lack of emails, even though they had suffered the abuse, they didn't get recognized the way the others did. Now, that shows you keep evidence of the abuse. What happens? Don't destroy your emails. Keep them. That is what you do. So this doesn't happen. Because the judge is saying that these women suffered tremendous abuse, but they were told, they were following orders of deleting emails. What do you think about that? I have to get something. Is anybody up on panel? Or is everybody asleep?
It's about time somebody paid attention to this. I think it's a cautionary tale that should be heeded by everyone. That this is not acceptable under any circumstances, period.
No, well, now there is a precedent.
Oh, yes.
This is very good news.
It makes a precedent for Great Britain. But
it's also
channel to the U.S.
But it's also good for us.
Right, that's right.
It is, because
It is very good. And, you know, they got so technical in the writing exactly what he did,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and how it affected some other person.
Yep.
And there are a lot of them, just like there are here.
you have to remember that some of these abusers, many of them, reside in the UK.
Ooh, this is true.
Yep.
Well, as I said,
And the ownership of those
Yeah.
hate channels, many of them are UK.
The UK have
stricter rules on free speech too.
It's very good news.
And the way it's worded there, it's factual.
Yep.
I like
Oh,
the way
yeah.
it's worded.
And it's very good news that all of these people are tweeting out this, and they're tweeting out the abuse, and they're not going to let it just go down. They're going to keep trying to hold Twitter and YouTube accountable for what they did.
Yeah.
So, and
I
that's why
suspect
we've
that
got to
this is
follow
gonna
these
bring about
people.
more suits.
What?
I suspect that this will bring about an avalanche of suits, actually.
Oh yeah, yes it will. This is terrific news. Absolutely wonderful news.
About time.
It is about time.
Yeah.
There are limits, you know?
Yep.
I don't know what this guy was hoping to achieve, especially other than tormenting and
But they like to do that. They love to torment people. I've seen people that are abusing me put down that one of the things they love to do is to get under someone's skin. That was something that they love to do.
oh,
Yeah, that's their hobby. Their hobby is tormenting. They're professional bullies, is what they are. They've been bullies their whole life. Some of them are
Yeah, you
covert,
gotta
some of them are out there, but they're all bullies. Pretending they're victims. And that's exactly what they said about this guy. You acknowledge this because you're in court that you caused these people harm, but you're still talking about what's been done to you and acting like you're a victim. Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah,
I think it's great.
I mean, so many things in that hit, so many words in that hit buttons deep.
Yeah.
You just can't stalk somebody. The stalker doesn't have to be outside your door. It could just be in the mind. That's what they're trying to do, is make us weak in the mind. We fall apart. We're not doing it.
Right. Diagnosing people with mental health
Right.
conditions, disorders, going back in obituaries and diagnosing their deceased parents with them. Yeah. All of that is all harassment, stalking. It's all falls under this. And I think we've got a whole bunch of people that can relate to this now that are out there in the open and they're putting their tweets out. And there's going to be a lot of stories. You know how, like, anything, right? When somebody, but hey, this happened to me too. There's going to be tons of stories coming forward now because people are going to want justice.
yes, exactly. There's going to be a lot.
There's going to be an avalanche now of outrage and demands for this to be
You know, like
tightened
one
up.
of the case was the man with the radio station, the DJ. And I can't even imagine, because even though you're a DJ talking into a microphone just like you do, it went under his skin after a while.
Under all of them.
Yeah.
They were all professional radio hosts.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of the BBC on the whole. This is gonna.
That's what I'm saying. These were professionals and many, and they couldn't take it. They were on the verge of suicide.
Right.
Yeah, so this is great news. This is really good news.
Really.
Wasn't one of them encouraged to go ahead and do it?
Yes, he encouraged them, and that's the same thing that happens
Killed
here.
Yeah. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Believe me, more and
Dum,
more
dum,
stories
dum,
going to
dum.
come out because these people they're just raging on YouTube to everything that's wrong in their life, and they're taking it out on everybody else. And good, it's about time.
Yep, sure is.
It is.
Great. Precedent set.
So we have to get a hashtag. Guess, you know, it's got to be a movement across there that it's more than just this, it's more than just that. It's happening all over, and it's got to be stopped, and YouTube and Twitter and all of them have to take it, you know?
Yeah.
Because physical stalking was all they had at one point. As soon as social media became the internet became an issue, then it didn't have to be physical stalking.
Yeah, no, this is stalking. When you're digital stalking.
Right.
And then using that and creating a narrative that's completely false and diagnosing deceased members of your family with mental health conditions, quoting a DSM-5. Come on.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that alone shows that the person doing that has a mental health condition, but to do that is just beyond harassment.
Oh, yeah.
I feel it's a great day,
bringing the
Rambling
kids
Recruiter.
into
A
it.
great day. I feel
Yeah.
it's a
Great
great day.
day.
I feel that there is a shift towards justice for these deranged individuals, Rambling Recruiter.
Hi, Rambling Recruiter. Is Rambling Recruiter there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they
Hi.
asked me if I felt like there was a shift. I said, yeah, I definitely think there is a shift.
Yeah.
Yes.
I woke
Not
up. Hi, Rambling Recruiter.
It's not hidden
I-
anymore.
Oh,
Before it was hidden. Now with this case, it is brought out.
Because you can always go back to this case. It's a precedent, and a lot of this is coming from the UK, this harassment.
Wait till they start suing YouTube and all the other.
Yeah,
Very
and this opens up
very
class
open.
action lawsuits and all kinds of things for YouTube and Twitter and everything. And people, like-minded people, to band together and follow. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to put all these people's Twitters in there and their YouTube channels, and we've got to really start, commenting on the video that he made that this guy ruined his life, and start banding together. How many Lindas do we have here? I don't know, Rough and Ready. Do we have a lot of Lindas?
3, sometimes 4.
We have Linda Uribe. Linda, I'm not allowed to say her last name anymore.
Linda with an R.
Linda with an R. Linda with an R. Linda Uribe.
Linda with an R.
Linda
With
with
an
an R.
R. Roni.
Oh, Linda Roning. Yeah, and then Linda Roars.
And the doors.
And there was a Linda G showed up on panel or on chat tonight.
Oh, Linda G.
And it wasn't our Linda.
No. Okay. Could she be our Linda? I'm asking if she could be our Linda.
Yeah.
There are 2 in here at the moment.
Okay.
How do you feel about this, Rambling Recruiter? Isn't it great news? You talked to the wrong Linda earlier. You confuse Linda G all the time. Oh, I see.
oh, there's another Linda G, maybe, huh? Is there another Linda G too, as well?
I guess, but Linda's not Linda G anymore. She was never Linda G.
No, she never
Hi,
was.
Crafty Crafter on a budget.
Hi, Crafty Crafter. I hope everybody's doing well tonight.
Yeah.
Personality.
Yeah, Captain Lee fan, definitely. They have to focus. YouTube has to focus on the bullying and harassment, definitely.
Absolutely.
And I think it's going to start.
I love the way this whole thing was written.
Yeah, it's great.
Life is hard enough for people. I mean, it really is. It really is.
You are so right. Oh,
I know, Rambling.
We just need to like be kinder to each.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
put one foot in front of the other every day. Sometimes that's
Yeah.
all you can do. And then people come along and you mess with that, so.
yeah. Imagine if these people who put all that hate into things just use that energy for kindness or good. It would be a better world all around, really.
Would have been, yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yes.
Well, there's some things I can't discuss right now, Rambling Recruiter. And that's not to be cryptic. It's just legally I can't discuss some things right now. Sorry that you're finding that ambiguous, but I'm glad that you're happy for our good news.
and we're glad you come to see us.
I'm
Yeah.
really glad you come to see us. I look forward to it every day, Rambling Recruiter, when I see you.
Yeah,
My friend's playing video games, so you just heard him yelling.
Sometimes you just can't share everything. There's the time and the place.
yeah.
Who's that, Joel?
Yeah, he's playing a video Destiny on Xbox, like a video game.
Oh,
And he just died, I think.
P's and Q's? It depends. What are they, when you said they're commenting daily, are they commenting or are they ridiculing? Are they body shaming? Are they talking about the people's family, their lives, their education, every bit of their life? Are they talking about the homes they own and their addresses and where they live, and body shaming their family members and their friends, and bringing minor children into it and putting minor children's the videos of minor children up there, and in the comments they're inciting hate and doxing family members' names and addresses and where they work, and in the comments doing nothing but ridiculing and pulling apart everyone by their physical features or all kinds of false allegations. Yeah, that constitutes harassment. And as you see here, it didn't matter that YouTube didn't agree, P's and Q's, because the court was the one, not YouTube.
I wouldn't say anymore if I were you.
I know. P's and Q's was just asking a question. But use your own judgment, P's and Q's. Well, then there's your answer, P's. And I thought it was interesting that they said one of them started a blog on the daily abuse, and that enraged that person. Because they always think, no, I'm not abusing anybody, I'm the victim. Yeah. Good. Can't believe it's only 1:55. It feels like it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And then you got Sherri Papini. She went to jail. She didn't think she was going to be going to jail as long as she was. I mean, prison. She is the mother that faked the kidnapping.
Good.
And I think I got a message from Whisper to Me. What's that? Refrigerator's making
Oh,
noises.
is something wrong?
Let me see if this is. Oh, something's up with her phone. So, but she says she's okay.
I'm glad to hear that. I've been worried about her.
Okay, I just got your messages now, so if you can hear me, I'll read more of them later, but I hope you're okay. Thanks. Hi, K-Love. How are you doing, K-Love? What?
Was the girl that faked her kidnapping, did she also brand herself?
Yes. Well, I don't know if she did it
You know, put a
herself. She was
brand
branded.
on
I don't know if the boyfriend did it or she did it. I don't know who did it, but she had a brand on her.
Right, she came out with a brand.
Yeah, I'm not sure who did it, you know.
Super crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Attention seeking.
Yeah. That's good, K-Love.
Very much.
What else is going on? Debbie D, are you up? Deborah Vancouver did?
You know, when crisis actors gotta start talking on camera. Sorry.
I know. How are you doing, Earthbound?
Fine. That's what they're saying.
Oh, I know. Crisis actors. Yeah, that's better. I guess it's a step up from a bot because you're a real person then, and you're just not just a bot. So that's a step
And
up.
it's funny that people think I'm good at acting. I don't know.
Well, they could maybe they think you're. But what if you're, acting like you act? But if your real personality is totally different, then you'd be a really good actress.
I wish. I mean, I can. I'd be famous and have a lot of money.
I know it's a good career move, right?
I guess so, if I can figure out how to do it. I mean, like some people are really good at pretending to be other people, and other people are not. And yeah, some people use it for good, and they make their way to Hollywood and become famous actresses or actors. And some people use it to scam others on various platforms.
Which reminds me, what the heck? That Taylor Parker trial, and I was looking for the trials today, and did something happen? Because I didn't. Let me see.
That's a good question.
Okay, wait a second. They are. Let's see. There's something. It says the witnesses testified about odd finances and pregnancy doubts. Okay, let's see what happened here.
Now, what case is this?
The one where the baby was cut out of the Reagan handcuffs. So it says, that.
Right.
Is this today? What's today's date? No, this is not today.
Mm.
Why can't they have the right one? So weird. You want me to? Witnesses testify about odd finances and pregnancy doubts. Doesn't want me to do this. Let's see this. Kidding me, right? You're be kidding me. Why is it just not? Let me just go to all. Day 5. Five days ago. Day 5. So that would have been day 5. Day 5. Okay. All right. Let's see if it's here. The mother of a man who dated death row inmate Taylor Parker testified Monday that she saw red flags in her son's relationship. Wade Griffin's mother, Connie Griffin, took the stand on day 5 of her testimony in the Bowie County Court. What was your perception of their relationship? Assistant District Attorney Kelly Crisp asked Connie Griffin. She, Parker, seemed to want intimacy. I didn't know if he wanted it or was backing down. There were some red flags. One was that she didn't have custody of her son. Parker has been charged with murder and could face the death penalty for murdering New Boston's Reagan Simmons Hancock on October 9, 2020, and taking her unborn child, who also died. Parker maintains her innocence. She is represented by Jeff Harrelson and Mark Cobb. Court adjourned shortly before 2 because a juror fell ill. Judge John Tidwell requested a break and the jurors were helped out of the courtroom. He said a jury would be used, and probably an alternate juror, they mean. On Monday morning, Connie testified that she had several conversations with Wade Griffin about Parker's alleged pregnancy. I asked if it looked like I told him it wasn't true. I tried to tell him, but he was convinced. She said Parker's arrest has been stressful for her entire family. It ruined our lives. She also testified about her suspicions when the couple started having financial problems. Wade Griffin and Parker bought a new Nissan Altima for Connie Griffin, the mother, and drove into her driveway to surprise her. She said she doesn't know where the money to buy the car came from. Connie Griffin testified that he suggested building a new barn on the grounds. A few weeks later, Parker called and said the car had been recalled due to a brake problem. Oh boy. She said, the mother said, I would drive it there, but I told my husband that he would never see this car again. When she called the dealer to check the car, she found out it had never been paid for. Oh. That's when I realized something was seriously wrong. That's what she said. Susie Ramirez, a former colleague of Parker's at Mount Pleasant Women's Clinic, testified that she was aware of Parker's medical history and was confident she could not conceive a child, but HIPAA laws prevented her from knowing who she was. I couldn't even speak to her. Protecting patient privacy is one of her rights, Ramirez said. I may lose my license. When questioned by the Assistant District Attorney Kelly Crisp, Ramirez testified that Parker visited the clinic in February 2020 to obtain medical records. She later testified that Wade Griffin called the clinic several times, but no one was able to give him any information. He said he couldn't take him. What? Ramirez and Parker were friends on social media, so Ramirez and others at the clinic could see the post about the alleged pregnancy. We tried to catch up with her at the clinic to see what the next steps would be. To be honest, I thought it would end in miscarriage, Ramirez testified. Cobb asked Ramirez whether he had spoken to other nurses or doctors about his suspicions. Cody Ott of Maud, Texas, testified that he had known Wade Griffin for a long time through his work with pigs. We have been the best of friends ever since. He loves the outdoor, he loves cattle, he loves to hunt. He testified that Griffin and Parker would come to his house, cook steaks, and visit around the fire pit. He testified that Parker had told Brian's Mill about owning land that her grandparents owned, an oil well, and that she was to inherit a large sum of money. Ott also testified that Parker and Griffin were trying to purchase 1,500 acres of land on the Red River. It hits the Red River. There were deer, ducks, pigs, said Ott. It was like paradise. Richard questioned Ott about his conversation with Wade Griffin regarding that Wade was said about quitting his job due to Parker's possible inheritance. At that point, I broke down and let him know my thoughts, Ott testified. I said to him, hey, this is all a scam. It's not really happening. Richards questioned Ott about what surprised him about Parker. Things weren't going well with the trucks and cars they were buying, he said. Was he receptive, Richards asked. He went home and confronted her and gave her a fever. Then more threatening emails started coming in, and he read them. He was a manipulator. This doesn't even make sense, whoever wrote this transcript. Kelly Mae May of Daisy, Oklahoma, poses for Parker's maternity photo on August 22nd, 2020. Parker had sent May a message saying, I'm in love with her rustic Western photos. I was touching her stomach. I had my hand on it, but I couldn't tell if it wasn't real. The testimony continues. Tomorrow, I guess if they have an alternate juror, one of them got sick. Okay. And that was weird. But I don't think the Alex Jones, I mean, I Okay, so Alex Jones is set to testify. Let's see. Waterbury is on high alert as conspiracy theorist and InfoWars host Alex Jones is expected to take the stand and testify. Let's see. The city's police department will be visibly outside the Waterbury Superior Court, while inside security sweeps will be conducted. The state has also pulled in more judicial marshals from the other courthouses across Connecticut. I just don't understand why it's going to take them 4 to 6 weeks to come up with monetary damages on a defamation case when he's already been found guilty, said a Waterbury resident, John Dempsey. The high-profile trial began last week. Jones and his Free Speech Systems company are on trial in a lawsuit brought by the FBI agent who responded to the shooting and relatives of 8 of the 20 first graders and 6 educators killed in the 2012 December massacre in Newtown. They say that Alex Jones inflicted emotional and psychological harm on them, and they have been threatened and harassed by Jones' followers. Jones has already been found liable for spreading the myth that the shooting never happened, and the 6-member jury will be deciding how much he and his company should pay the plaintiffs in damages. This is just more publicity for him, said Dempsey. Meanwhile, Charles Goldson of Waterbury said, I think he's a fraud, and I think he's just making money off lies. Much of last week's testimony focused on exactly that. The prosecution grilled Jones's corporate attorney, Brittany Paz, to show how Jones profited off of his lies through a massive audience growth and spikes in the sales of his supplements. Jones, who's described proceedings as kangaroo court from his InfoWars studio in Texas, created caricatures of Judge Barbara Bellis. He runs the risk of being held in contempt. Jones isn't the only one on trial, so is the First Amendment, the right to free speech. You can say whatever you want, but you aren't protected from the people's reactions to what you say, remarked Duncan Kelly of Waterbury. Jones is expected to be in Connecticut from Tuesday to Thursday, but it's unlikely he'll take the stand Tuesday, as testimony is expected to continue for Jones's corporate attorney, Paz. The judge has indicated she will decide then whether to further limit what the defense may argue when it comes to the worth of Jones' holdings. Okay, so that should be interesting, I guess, coming up. Anyway, I guess we're going to. Is anyone following in the chat any of those trials?
Jones is a creep. I don't
Yeah.
have any issues with a conspiracy theorist, but
Mhm.
when you something like the Newtown shooting into a conspiracy theory and call it a false flag, I have an issue with that.
Yeah.
And I gave up listening to him at that point.
Yeah.
That was disgusting.
It is disgusting. It is, but like all of this, it seems like it's all coming to a head now, you know?
Good.
And it's good. It's about time. Yeah, it's about time. It's good. It really, I mean, it just had to catch, you know, it has to catch up. Like they said, our laws just have to catch up. And I don't know, I'm just very happy with the news. So I think we're going to end this. And you have been following a lot on and off. Okay, Kevin. And we'll go to the Zoom and stuff. But thanks, guys, for watching. And we'll see you tomorrow. And I'll be following those trials tomorrow. And I'm going to post some more stuff on about these Twitter accounts about that landmark case. You're not blocked, Rambling Recruiter. Everybody was hanging on every word I said, so they weren't typing because they were listening to me rambling. That's called concentration. When everybody's typing about other things, they're not really listening, right, Rambling Recruiter? Maybe other chats you're in aren't like that. I don't know. Okay? You are down the Kelly Rodney rabbit hole? Okay. Yeah, Kevin, I don't think rambling is used to people listening. Sorry, Rambling. But we'll see you tomorrow, Rambling. We know you're watching. Bye now. Bye, everybody. God bless. Prayers for all that need them. We'll see you tomorrow. Okay, let me end that. And let me